Welcome to RealScary, the home of true, scary stories, where we bring you the most unnerving of content. From British ghost stories to the most gruesome of murders. If you are quite partial to a scary story, you're in the right place. In the mid-1800s, a man by the name of Walter lost his life in the most cruel of circumstances. His commitment and duty to others would unfortunately lead to his own untimely death. This is the story of the brave lighthouse keeper. Ancient records exist regarding several piers from the town of Whitby, all of which extend way back to medieval times. And at least one document states that a pier had existed in Whitby at the dissolution of monasteries in 1539. However, the pier in question has been described as being much further inland than the current west and east piers, and is thought to be what we now know as the Tate Hill Pier. King Henry VIII ordered that the Tate Hill Pier should be repaired from the Crown's purse, and also that timber required for those repairs should come from the King's Woods, which was in the locality of Whitby at the time. The harbour at Whitby was known as a substantial export hub for alum, which led in turn to coal being imported. Then during the 17th and 18th centuries, shipbuilding became a major industry. However, the mainstay of Whitby Harbour was providing anchorage and offloading services to the fishing industry. Now, approximately 170 years ago, a torrential thunderstorm was wreaking its havoc through the town of Whitby. The lighthouse keeper at the time was a man by the name of Walter Corbett, who on one winter's night had noticed that the thunderstorm had blown out the lighthouse light. He knew that the chance of a shipwreck, given the horrendous weather conditions, was highly likely, but he had to reach the lighthouse urgently, as to ensure the safety of the sailors that were heading directly for Whitby Harbour. He eagerly put on his coat, boots and hat and proceeded to battle his way through the wet and windy streets of Whitby, eventually reaching the West Pier and subsequently the lighthouse. Now, it must have been going through Walter's mind on that cold winter's night that the mariners out at sea in the middle of a violent thunderstorm would have had no idea how close they were to the harbour without the lighthouse light, and that the ferocious waves would be making it all but impossible for them to steer their ships. Walter was dripping wet by the time he reached the lighthouse, and upon entering was also confronted with a monumental leak. The thunderstorm had clearly blown out one of the lighthouse windows. What Walter was not aware of, however, was that the rainwater from the blown out window had soaked the lighthouse staircase, making them incredibly unsafe, especially in the low light conditions he now found himself in. Undeterred and with a sense of urgency, Walter climbed up the lighthouse steps and managed to relight the lighthouse light. Relieved, he waited a few moments. The light stayed on. He was now safe in the knowledge that his job was done. And maybe he had also managed to save some lives in the process. Unfortunately for Walter, however, he would sadly not be able to save his own. During his descent down the rain-soaked stairs, Walter lost his footing, slipped, and fell down the remainder of the steps, landing headfirst on the concrete floor below. Walter, the brave lighthouse man, was no more. He died instantly. Today, the West Pier Lighthouse in Whitby is open to the public and has been for some time. Thousands of tourists have clambered the very same steep, narrow steps to where poor Walter lost his life many years previously. And many claim that walking them gives an authentic feeling of somehow walking through history. What the unsuspecting tourists are not aware of, however, is that Walter, the old lighthouse keeper, has never actually left. And many unsuspecting visitors to the pier have reported seeing a man dressed in old-fashioned clothes hurriedly making his way along the West Pier, whilst others have reported a similar figure running terrifyingly towards them, only to suddenly disappear into the cold night air. But the most common reported sighting, which is thought to be that of Walter, is the figure of a man laid across the floor beside the entrance of the lighthouse, moaning in agony, only to disappear upon approach. Now I think only the bravest of souls would venture along the West Pier during the darker hours, and if you are one of those brave souls, prepare yourself for a potential glimpse of Walter as he carries out his mission from beyond the grave. Thank you for joining me in our latest edition of Scary Stories. I do hope that you enjoyed, and if you did enjoy, I would ask that you like, share and subscribe. Please feel free to leave a comment. I do read and respond to them all, eventually. And as always, be safe and sweet dreams.